There we go. Lesson 40. And we started a little bit on lesson 40 last week, a little bit. And are there any questions about what we looked at a little bit last week? We got down somewhere about right in here. All right. Any questions about what we covered last week? Let me go back and review it all, and let us make a point here. This is the first aorist subjunctive, and there'll be third declension nouns as well. And we went through Revelation 21:21, and the aorist subjunctive, we take the first aorist indicative, and the first aorist subjunctive made from the same stem, the third principal parts. Go back to your principal parts lesson and see that. The characteristic sign is a sigma. All right. It's a sigma. Since the alpha is an aorist sign, so we have a sigma alpha. We'll come down here to it just a little bit. Contract verbs like AO, so forth. And OO, with the subjunctive ending, it contracts with it. So we have a sigma, and the singular just is sigma omega, just ends with omega. Now, I think if you look at that, you'll see that that's the same ending as the future. So that can be kind of confusing, singular, right? And right here we have a sigma, and a sigma. And this thing won't do very well. And another sigma here, and a sigma down here. It's trying to make corrections, what it's trying to do. And a sigma here. I'll just let the mouse go over it. You see the sigmas all across here, and the sigma, and then the passive has a theta. We'll get to that in just a minute. All right. It has a theta ending. So we have the active, middle, and passive. Okay. Singular, plural, singular, plural, singular, plural. Okay. So our endings are so, say, somen, sate, so see. That's active. So my say, and I want you to notice this ending here and this ending here are the same. So that can be kind of confusing. You have to go by context there. Say ta, so much and the so say stay and sontai. And they, though and they, thoman, they, and thosi. All right, those are your endings. So your passive takes a theta, and then your middle takes just a sigma and omai, a tie with a sigma on them, okay, omatha, and so forth. Any questions? So the second aorist subjunctive uses the same endings as the second aorist stem. Those are endings. The aorist subjunctive, point action, opposed to the present, which is linear, and aorist here is not temporal. That is, it doesn't have time as a factor in it. That's what that means. So therefore, it doesn't have the augment. The augment, that you have an alpha at the beginning, that would be a subjunctive. And so the alpha, an augment telling you it's past tense. It's looking back in the past. And so it doesn't have an augment because it's not temporal. And most constructions are future. That is, they function as future. since the context of construction was used, not used to place action in the future, because it's strictly from context. It's not. It is not a future tense. Keep that in mind. Areas to be used constructions already learned. You have hina and hopos for purpose. We looked at those in the last lesson, the distinction between those. And of course, we use may, mu, eta. We use this for negation, and hiname for less, in order that not, and further dependent uses follow. Okay. So, any questions? Now we have temporal clauses. That's an indefinite future. So it's indefinite. The subjunctive makes it indefinite. And so the fact that it's indefinite means that that's why the subjunctive was chosen. And so it is an indefinite tense, mood actually. The mood itself is indefinite. The most indefinite mood is imperative mood, because I don't know whether you're going to do what I say if I give you a commandment. So it's really up in the air. Context has to tell you again. Hotan, when, whenever, haos, on, haos or haos on. And on is intranslatable. It's not translated, and it makes it indefinite. So it makes it indefinite. So again, you have to go back to your context and see when it's going to happen. I'll call your attention to it in Acts 2:39. The word on is in the verse. It's in the subjunctive mode. The verbs, the main verb is, and it has on. Then until may cree, and it may have on with it also. Now, if may cree is followed by a vowel or a diphthong, it'll have a sigma on the end of may crease. So it'll become a sigma here. So it'll pick up that sigma. I'll put the sigma on it right now. I'm going to let you see what it would look like. Look like may crease. And if it was may crease on, it would have a sigma. If it was may cree and it's followed by a consonant, it would be may cree without sigma. Okay? It's the same word. It's just like a movable new. Okay? All right. Any question? That's until.
Yes. So this may be, I guess, with that. I guess I'm just trying to figure out if something's indefinite in the future, are we saying it just doesn't have a very specific point in the future?
We don't know when it's going to occur or if it's going to occur. It's up in the air. And it may be, for instance, the Lord's coming. We don't know when it's going to occur. In that case, we know it is going to occur. There'll be probably an indicative mood sentence telling you it will occur. And then the when might be in the subjunctive mood, when the Lord may come. All right, when he chooses to come. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so the indefiniteness is something that, like the second coming, I don't know when it's going to occur. It's going to occur, but I don't know when. And we might have salvation being promised, and it's indefinite, and it's contingent upon your obedience. Okay, for instance, and in the Acts 2:39, for the promises to you and to yours, to all that may call. See, and so that's indefinite. They might not call. Does that make sense? The Lord
Yes.
shall call. Okay. All right. All right. And so we have, it may have on, it may not. Okay. Hotan and that's the time. That's the word when. Therefore, and voyage, and that's subjunctive mood. When may do, whenever you may do, and you may do alms, free will offerings is what that basically is. This is free will offerings. All right. That's, of course, that's a noun. Hotan, when you may hear, they may hear, when they may hear. Hotan, kusosin. And the new may be movable. So let's go back up. Sosin. And so it could have a movable new on it right here. So we might have a new there, and because of a vowel after it sometimes. And sometimes the movable new is there, and it's not a diphthong or a vowel after it in some of your manuscripts. Okay? So they just added it on anyhow. It's like our English word possum, P-O-S-S-U-M, but it can be spelled O-P-O-S-S-U-M. And that's an alternate spelling for it. And so we have sometimes they put the new on it, it doesn't have a vowel or diphthong following it. So, all right. And this is just movable new right there, what I've highlighted. Okay. Else on Parathe, Ho, Uranos, Kai, He, Gay. Okay. Until may come to pass the heavens and the earth. Okay. And so this, of course, and so this is they and theta. And so right here we have theta, eta, right here. That's your ending right there. I've got it highlighted over here. Move my mouse around a little bit. Okay. That's third person. Osid. Let's see. That's Osid. Okay. They. That's they. And that's singular, third person singular. Now, why would it be singular? Well, because heaven and earth passing away is viewed as one event, and so it's singular. It's third person singular. Okay, that's the reason why it's viewed as one event. This may be right out of scripture. I think it probably is. I didn't look at that. Any question? All right, we have a relative clause.
Is that always the, sorry to interrupt, but is that always the case where it will treat something as one event? Or are there specific cases where that's not the case?
I think this would be one case, and it might, if they're treated as two separate events, that would have been a plural. The verb would have been plural down here. Okay.
Are there specific rules or instances when one or the other occurs?
No, not that I know of. You just have the context and see, because if he chose a singular verb here, he's trying to tell you that those two things, we have two subjects. Both of these are in the nominative case. Uranos and Haggai, and Kai makes them equal to each other. And they're two separate things because both have the article. And so this is heaven and earth. And that's not plural heaven either. No, heaven is usually plural. So I think there's some significance in the fact that it's singular in heaven because it's usually plural. And my judgment, it probably refers to the heaven where God dwells. Whereas where the birds fly and where the sun, moon, and stars are also called heaven.
Does the definite article come into play?
The article makes them two separate things, heaven and earth. In this case, I'm sorry, I have to back up on that. I think this probably would be the physical realm. Physical realm, and not where God dwells. And so, if they shall pass away, and so the heaven and earth, and those two are going to pass away at the same time. If we study the rest of the Bible, that's why I think it's singular over here, because it's one event. It's viewed as one event, and that would tell you something about what he's talking about there. Those two occur at the same time. I think this heaven then, if that's the case, this has to be the physical realm, not where God dwells. I stand corrected. Okay. This probably is in the Bible. Heaven and earth pass away. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall never pass away. Okay.
It's in Matthew 5:18.
Matthew 5:18.
Yes, sir.
I'll just write it in there. All right.
Well, thank you. That helps.
And so I think those are viewed as one event because of that being singular, the verb being singular. And both of these are separate things. The earth is the physical earth that we're on. I think heaven here, passing away, because where God dwells is not going to pass away. So I would deem it as probably where the sun, moon, and stars are in the physical realm. Okay. I would think in the word heaven is used, it's usually plural, but right here it's singular. And probably the significance of it is it's probably where the sun, moon, and stars are. The first heaven is where the birds fly. That's part of the earth, see. And the second heaven is where the sun, moon, and stars are. I think there's a fourth heaven. The third heaven is paradise, and that's mentioned in, I think, the 12th chapter of 2 Corinthians. And then that's where the abode of the dead, that's in the Hadean realm. And then I think they would apply a fourth heaven where God dwells. So this right here, I think, is talking about the physical heaven where the sun, moon, and stars are. That's my view. I'm going to have to put that in my notes on that passage I've translated the Sermon on the Mount, and I keep going back and just adding notes to it as I study and learn stuff. I'll put this in my notes tonight, probably after class. Any questions?
Yes. Could you give me an example where you have the chi and then two separating two nouns, but it's two separate events?
Two separate events?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. There's a bunch of them. Oh boy. I'm thinking of some right quick where they have one there, they're the same. They don't have the article. If it has the article, this is called Granville Sharp's rule. Let me write it right here for you. Granville Sharp. That's what it's called. And what it says is, if we have two nouns or participles or even adjectives separated with the first one has the article, and then we have chi, and then we have an article with the second one, that means they're two separate things. If we have an article with the first one and not chi, and then no article with the second one, are the same thing. Now, I'll have to think a minute. There's a passage that speaks of Jesus Christ. And now there's a passage or two that says God the Father. And the Lord Jesus, our God and Savior Jesus. Anyhow, there's a passage or two like that it shows that Jesus is God. And I'll just have to get you passage later. I'll try to do that before next week, okay? Sorry.
Thank you.
But there are several passages. This is an important point because if the first one has the article, it doesn't have to be a nominative case article, okay? The first one has the article, they're singular. First one has the article, and the second one has the article also. They're two separate things. If this first one has the article and they have chi, and the second one does not have the article, then they're the same thing. Okay. All right. Okay, that's Granville Sharpshaw. Any other questions? Let me take a quick look. All right, I'm gonna look in the Bible. I think it's in Philippians 1. So flip over to Philippians 1. Pretty sure that's what it is. So it's not Philippians 1. Let's try Ephesians 1. All right. No, I'm sorry. I'm taking up time in class. I just have to look at. I know there's some verses that have it in there. Okay, I'll have them for next week. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, let's go on. Let's go on. Section 316, indefinite relative clauses. It has a relative pronoun, and here are your relative pronouns. These are the most common relative pronouns. I'm sorry. Here are the three most common ones. House, the first one is masculine singular relative pronoun, nominative case. Hey is feminine singular nominative case relative pronoun. And ho, the third one here, ho is a nominative singular neuter. So the first one is masculine, the second one is neuter, third one is second one is feminine, the third one is neuter. That's the word who. Osos is how many. It's also a relative pronoun. Now the ending on it, this is masculine, and they would drop the os, omega, omicron sigma, put an eta in there. That would make it feminine. They'd drop the omicron sigma, put an omicron nu, and make it neuter. And those are all first person singular. This is masculine. The eta ending would make it neuter. The on ending would make it, eta ending would make it feminine. The on ending would make it neuter. Well, I'm getting mixed up here. Okay. And that's how many are combined with the indefinite particles on, with the indefinite particles on and aeon. I'm going to have to make that a little smaller. Okay, so if it has on or aeon, then either one of those, both of this is if, and it's an iffy if, I call it. And then this is not translatable. On is never translated, okay? But it makes it indefinite, right? Here's Romans 9:15 and Luke 9:5. I don't know if that's in your text that way, but hopefully I put it in there. LA, so on LAO. I shall pity whomever I shall pity. And this is on. And this, of course, is accusative case. And whomever I shall pity. That's accusative. Okay. And then on is untranslatable. Whomever I pity. Whomever, and that makes it indefinite. Whomever I shall pity. God pities everybody, but the actual pity is not received by anyone. He offers mercy to you, and that's what he's offering the mercy, but all don't accept it. It's conditional. Okay. And it's Romans 9:15. Hosoi, and that's from this word up here. And so that oi ending would be nominative plural masculine. And then on again, that makes it evident not, if not how many, whosoever, how many might not receive you or do not receive you, right? And they've translated do not receive you, but might not receive you. Probably more accurate, right? Now, dekomai, this verb right here is dekomai. And let me type it up here. Come on. Okay, dekomai. And I'll change it so you can. Well, okay. There it is. Dekomai is to take or to receive, and it's to receive with welcome. You're anticipating, you're welcoming it. Okay. And lambano, I'll type it out. Lambano is to self-prompted taking or receiving. Right. So that's the difference in those two words. Right. All right, and this comes from dekomai. So how many ever do not receive you? They don't welcome you. They're not self-prompted taking. They're not out there looking for you. And so there's some people that their hearts are not such that they're looking for the truth. And those people are not going to be receptive to the gospel. We're sorry that they're that way, and we hope they'll change their attitude. But that's an attitude of failing to welcome. Any questions? Now note carefully, other important subordinate uses are being introduced later, and the third class conditional sentence is one of those. We'll have a whole section on it. Right? The vowel, iota, and upsilon stems of the third declension, and vowel stems of the third declension are mostly feminine nouns, many of which are abstract. Now, abstract nouns like peach teas. Most abstract nouns are feminine gender, right? And so that's the nature of abstract nouns. They tend to be feminine gender most of the time. All right. So right here, police. And of course, we have the feminine article, so it's feminine gender. And pistis is faith. Agape is love, it's feminine. And most of your abstract nouns are feminine. There was a different grade of vowel in various cases resulting in a stem variation, poly and pole. Notice what happens is the iota becomes an epsilon. And I'm told that in modern Greek, most of their vowels would almost get an E sound to them. They don't even make a distinction between them. And so that's very interesting. I suspect modern Greek may not be like ancient Greek then because of that. The accusative singular ending is no rather than alpha. So right here, the accusative singular ending is a no rather than an alpha. And so the stem here becomes, and it becomes right here. Okay, right there's your stem, and it's these first four letters. Okay, if I can highlight it, hopefully it'll right there. There's your stem. They show the stem up here. Okay. Right. Now then, the epsilon becomes an iota down here. Here, and all of these down here. And that kind of changes it. So that's what they're trying to tell you here with this up here. Okay. The variation in the stem. The stem actually changes. So it becomes an epsilon instead of an iota here, 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 and here. It goes back to iota here and here, and of course in the nominative. Okay. All right. Notice the lengthening of os and os in the genitive singular to os in the genitive singular. And so we had a sigma, and so it becomes an omicron. Okay. And so it should have been an omicron sigma, but it becomes an omega sigma. That's long. It's a long O. And that's what they're telling you. This is your third declension. All right, so let's go back. This is our vowel stems in the third declension. All right, that's what they're talking about. All right, that's the nature of it. All right, this is an iota sigma ending. Police, and our English word police, like policeman. It's a city. And technically, a policeman will be a city law enforcement officer by the city. And other words would be used for other law enforcement officers. And pecus is a cubit. A cubit is a measure from your elbow to the end of your middle finger. Now, my cubit is roughly 18 inches. I've measured it's about 18 inches. So the arc was, you know how many cubits it was, and that was a measuring stick. And if Noah was bigger, it might have been longer than that. So we get about 300 cubits was the length of it. And 300 times 1.5 feet will be 450 feet was my cubit. If Noah was a big man, taller, his cubit might have been longer, so it might have been more than 450 feet. Okay. And it could have been, there's some that estimate his cubit might have been 22 inches. That was a raw cubit back in that time. And so the arc could have been as long as maybe 600 feet, 550 feet or so, somewhere thereabouts. All right. Now, this cubit measure of distance or length. And any questions? There's your endings. Then it becomes an epsilon sigma, and then that goes and becomes an epsilon, and it goes back to the epsilon down here in the accusative and the vocative. So it follows here with that same form. But your plural has basically the same endings. Ace on, ace on, se, sorry, and ace back to ace, and your accusative And then we have ace again for the vocative, right? Vocative plural. Okay. Now in this case, the vocative singular is different in form than the vocative nominative singular. A lot of them are the same, but in this case it's different. Okay. Right. Some of these stems have a regular os genitive ending. And he tells us to note the accent. Okay. All right. The accent becomes fixed on the anti-P note. Anti is before. All right. And so it's before the P note. Okay. Before the genitive became long. All right. Any questions? On and aeon is a particle expressing indefiniteness, and on is not translated. So this one is not translated. It depicts uncertainty. And again, as I pointed out to you, in Acts 2:39, it's in the subjunctive mood and it has on in it. So whatever he's talking about there is uncertain. And it's kind of iffy. But it might be if you obey. Does that make sense? So just because it's iffy doesn't mean it just might be that it's contingent upon your obedience. Anastasis and ana is up and stasis is to stand. The resurrection is you stand up. And of course, it's a feminine noun. And guo and guo, that's that taste. Okay. And dunamis, and our word dynamo, dynamic, dynamite, all of those words come from it. Dynamic, and all of these words come from it. And that's power. And then we have a rough reading. Hinekan, and Hinekan, and Hinika or Hinika. Now what this is, these are variant spellings of that word. So it has two spellings. It's a prepositional adverb. Right? It takes the genitive case. Because of, and eyes kunoma, eyes kunoma. And that's epi and eiskunoma. Eiskunoma is to be ashamed. That's really to be ashamed. Okay. That's upon shame, basically. Eos, that's the temporal until, and usually with the subjunctive. But I don't think you'll find it very much with the indicative mood. I think it's going to be subjunctive or optative. Probably the optative. Optative is wish. Lupe is sorrow. And again, it's abstract. Macri, and it could have a sigma on it, remember? Or Macri on until. Mene monuo, I remember. It's brought to my remembrance. With genitive or accusative. So it can be with either one of those cases. You can take a genitive object or an accusative object. Generally, when they take a genitive object or an accusative object, there's a difference in the meaning of it. And you need to study that more carefully. Right? So you need to look at the object that it takes. Right? Host, on, aeon. Host with on, whoever. Host with aeon, whoever, if he might be. It's indefinite. Hotan is when. It's an adverb whenever or when. And it could be hoti on. It's actually hoti on put together, and they got the epsilon dropped off where I have a cursor. So that's what they're telling you. That's where that word came from. Fakers, cubit, we had already had that. Pistis, faith. police, city, pros decomine. This is the word decomine that I gave you earlier. Break it apart. Hopefully there it broke. Decomine is to welcome, to receive was welcome. And pros was two words to wait for. I'm looking for it to come. And waiting for it. I want to talk about faith just 1 minute. And I think it's important that we get ourselves straight on what faith is. The English dictionary will define faith improperly. Faith is something we have certainty of based upon sufficient evidence. That's very important. So it is knowing things based on evidence. And there's 3 ways we know things. We know things by our senses, our 5 senses, and that's what science is all about. And we know things by reasoning. And so I'll give you a point of reasoning. Abraham and went down into Egypt. And when he got near Egypt, he talked to Sarah. And then when he got down into Egypt, he talked to Sarah. So we know Sarah went to Egypt also, although it doesn't explicitly say she did, it says he did. But he was talking to Sarah just before he entered Egypt, and he's talking to Sarah after he enters Egypt. So we draw the conclusion that she went with him. That's a reasonable conclusion. But it doesn't say anything about Lot, whether Lot went with him or not, going down into Egypt. But before he went to Egypt with Sarah, he was with Lot. We can read that in the text of Genesis. And then when he came back out of Egypt, he and Sarah came out and Lot came with him. So we don't know that for sure that Lot went down into Egypt with Abraham and Sarah, but we know he came out of Egypt with them. We don't have any passage that says he went down into Egypt, but we know he did because he was in Canaan. And then later he came out of Egypt, so he must have gone down into Egypt. Probably went down into Egypt with Abraham and Sarah. Does that make sense? So that's reasoning. All right, any question there? Now, faith is based upon evidence, and you have to reason properly from the evidence. That's in Hebrews 11. It's defined that way. It's what I know based on evidence. All right. Who was the first president of the United States? Someone tell me.
George Washington.
Did you get that from a mathematical equation?
No.
No. Did you see George Washington? Did you touch him? Did you smell of him? Did you hear him speak?
No.
So it wasn't by scientific method. It wasn't by mathematics or logic. So how do you know? There's been sufficient evidence that there was a man named George Washington, and there's too much evidence to support the conclusion that he existed. Does that make sense? It's just evidence. You looked at evidence to see that he was a president. We got stronger evidence that Jesus was resurrected. I believe the evidence is stronger that Jesus was resurrected than George Washington was president of the United States. I don't have a doubt in my mind that George Washington was our first president under the Constitution. But I believe the evidence that Jesus was resurrected is even stronger. Right? Any question there? Okay. So that's what faith is. It's what I know based upon evidence. That's Hebrews 11. So we know things by 3 ways: by our senses, by reasoning, and that would include mathematics, logic and mathematics, and we know things by examining the evidence with using sound reasoning and examining the evidence. Okay, any questions? Anybody? All right.
Can I ask something about something else?
Yeah, go ahead, Benjamin.
On the Hotan, when it's separated out into ota on, is that supposed to be a rough breathing mark on the ota?
Probably, I think so, Hoteon. I think that's incorrect. I'll check that, but I'm pretty sure you're right. Right. Now, Hoteon, Hoti is what it started with. Those two words are put together. It should be a rough breathing, and I want to change it right now. Thank you. I'll move it down here. There we got it. Now we got it fixed, don't we? Thank you. This was two words that are put together by a process called CRASIS, C-R-A-S-I-S, and they're put together and made one new word. It's like our words every and one put together to become everyone. Very similar process in English. Okay. All right, any questions? We have some more. Let's cover these other vocabulary words. Phthisis, that's affliction. And that's usually where you are actually in a state of being like between a rock and a hard place is the way we say it. You're compressed. Kathizo is I sat down, set, S-E-T down, or seat, intransitive to sit or tarry. Krisis is judgment. And again, it's feminine. That's feminine also. Martyria is witness, and the word martyr comes from it. Tikto is I bear, I'm in travail, and that would be like a woman's in travail to give birth. Timao is I honor, and Ophaleo is our prophet. All right. So let's stop there. That's about the end of where we need to be. And let's do this. Let's look at text A next week. Is that all right?
Sounds good.
Okay. Let me get out of this.
Are we gonna meet next week?
Yeah, no, not next week.
Yeah.
That's Thanksgiving. We'll meet on Monday night, but not on Tuesday and Thursday night.